The Kidnappers. Keeper was sad because the magic key would not glow. He looked at the key for a long time. At last, he fell asleep. Suddenly, the key glowed and the magic began to work. Keeper's toys were coming to life. Teddy gave Keeper a shake. "Wake up," he said. "The magic key is glowing. The magic is working." Keeper sat up and rubbed his eyes. He looked at his toys. "Come on, Keeper," said Casimir. "Hurry up. It's time for a magic adventure." The toys ran to the little house. "Hurry up, Keeper," called Teddy. "Be quick, or it will be too late." Keeper could feel the magic working. It pulled him inside the magic house. The magic whisked Keeper round and round. "Oh, help!" called Keeper. "I feel different. This is a different sort of magic." The magic took them to an airport. It was a very busy airport. Casimir was excited. "Maybe we can catch a plane," he said. "Maybe we can have an exciting adventure." There were bears everywhere. They were going to Switzerland. "They're going to the teddy bears' picnic," said Teddy. "They have one every year." "Maybe we can go too," said Bunbury. Keeper was not so sure. "How can we?" he asked. "Of course we can go," said Teddy. "This is a magic adventure." Keeper and his friends went on the aeroplane to Switzerland. They flew over lake and mountains. "What a beautiful place for a picnic," said Keeper. When the plane landed, everyone got off. There were lots and lots of bears. Keeper had never seen so many. They had come from all over the world. "It's going to be a big picnic," said Keeper. There was a bus at the airport. It was going to the teddy bear's picnic. "Come on," said Casimir. "If we run, we can catch this bus." Keeper liked Switzerland. "It's beautiful here," said Keeper. It was fun on top of the bus. The bears waved at everyone and everyone waved back. At last, the bus arrived. Everyone got off. "I've never seen so many bears," said Keeper. "We'd better stay together in case we get lost." Keeper and his friend found a good place to sit. Suddenly, everyone shouted and cheered. A famous bear had come onto the stage. He waved at the crowd. "Welcome to the teddy bear's picnic," he said. "I know him," said Keeper. "He's a very famous bear indeed. I've read all his books." Another famous bear came onto the stage. He began to tell jokes and sing funny songs. Everyone laughed and cheered. "I know that famous bear too," said Keeper. "I've seen him on TV." A famous pop group came onto the stage. They played while the bears had their picnic. "This is the best picnic I've ever been to," said Keeper. Keeper had an autograph book. He wanted some of the famous bears to sign their names. "I can show them to Biff and Chip," said Keeper. "Then they will know I have had a magic adventure." They went to find the famous bears, but there was trouble. Some nasty bears were pushing the famous bears into a car. "It's a kidnap," said Bunbury. "We must do something." The car sped away. Casimir saw a van. "Come on," he shouted. "Get in. We can follow the kidnappers in this van." Casimir drove the van as fast as he could. The car went even faster. It drove up a mountain road. "Faster! Faster!" called the Bunbury. "Don't lose them," called Teddy. The car drove through some big gates and stopped in front of a house. The famous bears were pushed inside. "It looks dangerous," said Keeper. "But we must rescue them. I have a plan." Keeper and Casimir went to the house. Keeper rang a bell. Some nasty bears came to the door. "Free honey," called Keeper. "Free honey for every bear." The nasty bears were greedy and they couldn't resist the honey. They didn't see what Teddy and Bunbury were doing. Teddy went to the car and took out the keys. Bunbury went to the back of the house and looked through a window. He saw famous bears. They were tied up. Bunbury set the famous bears free. Then they all climbed out of the window. "Come on," said Teddy. "Follow me and don't make a sound." The famous bears crept into the honey van. The nasty bears didn't see them because they were too busy eating the honey. One of the nasty bears saw that the famous bears were escaping. "They're in the honey van," he shouted. "Go after it." Casimir drove the honey van as fast as he could. The nasty bears ran after the van, but they got stuck in the honey. "Hooray!" shouted Keeper. The famous bears were pleased with Keeper and his friends. "You were very clever," they said. "Thanks to you, the teddy bear's picnic can go on." The magic key began to glow. It was time for Keeper's adventure to end. "I can't wait to tell Biff and Chip about it," he said. "The magic key glowed last night," said Keeper. "I had a magic adventure." "We don't believe you," said Biff. "No, it was just a dream," said Chip. Viking Adventure. Wolf and Wilma came to the door. It was time to go to school. Keeper told everyone about his adventure at the teddy bear's picnic, but nobody believed him. Biff, Chip and Wolf were in Mr. Johnson's class. The children liked Mr. Johnson. He made everything interesting and he told lots of good stories. Mr. Johnson had a model ship. "Can you tell me what sort of ship this is?" he asked. Wolf put up his hand. "It's a Viking ship," he said. "Well done, Wolf," said Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson showed the children a picture of a Viking ship. "This ship was called a longship," he said. "It had oars and a sail and it moved very fast through the water." "The Vikings lived a long time ago," said the Mr. Johnson. "They crossed the sea in ships like this." Mr. Johnson showed the children a Viking helmet and a Viking shield. Mr. Johnson helped the children with the Viking project. It was very interesting. They made model longships and they made Viking shields and helmets. Mr. Johnson took the children into the school hall. They made a big longship. Then they all dressed up as Vikings and pretended to row it. "It's hard work being a Viking," said Biff. The children came home from school. They looked at the magic key. They wanted it to glow because it had not glowed for a long time. Keeper told them about his magic adventure, but still nobody believed him. Keeper was upset. "The magic key glowed in the night," he said. "It glowed when it was dark. It did, it did, it did." Biff looked at the key. "I wonder," she said. Biff had a good idea. "Maybe the key will glow in the dark," she said. She got a torch and then she found a big thick blanket. The children sat on the floor and they pulled the blanket over themselves. It was dark under the blanket. Suddenly the key began to glow. The magic was working after all. "I told you so," said Keeper. There was no wind. The Vikings rowed the longship across the sea. Every man pulled on the oars. It was hard work being a Viking. Suddenly the wind began to blow. "Hooray!" said the Vikings. "Now we can put up the sail. The wind can't blow the ship along and we won't have to work so hard." One of the Vikings heard the noise. He went to look. He found the children. "Oh no," said Wilf. "We're on a Viking longship. I don't believe it." The Viking jumped back. He couldn't believe it either. He looked very fierce. "Oh dear," said Keeper. "He doesn't look pleased to see us." The Viking pushed the children to the back of the longship. "Look at all these animals," said Keeper. "I don't like it here. It smells." The wind began to blow harder. The Vikings put up the sail. The wind blew harder and the ship tossed up and down. The waves splashed over the children. They got cold and wet. Keeper began to feel sick. "It's not much fun on a longship," he said. At last, the longship landed. "Hooray!" shouted the Vikings. They jumped into the water and carried boxes and barrels to the shore. The children looked over the side of the longship. "I hope we don't have to jump in," said Keeper. "It looks cold and wet." "You don't have to jump in," said the Viking. "I will throw you in." The children waded to the shore. The villagers were amazed. They had never seen children like these before. Keeper had some sweets. He shared them with the Viking children. They had never seen sweets before. They didn't know what to do with them. The Vikings took the children into a long hall. A fire was burning in the middle of the floor. There was smoke everywhere. It began to get dark and soon it was time to have some food. "So this is what Vikings eat," said Wilf. As soon as it was dark, a longship sailed close to the shore. On the longship were some Viking raiders. They were going to attack the village. One of the villagers saw the longship and ran into the long hall. "Help! Help!" he called. "Raiders are landing!" The raiders looked very fierce. They ran toward the village. "They're going to attack," said Wolf. "What can we do?" "I wish the magic key would glow," said Keeper. Biff had an idea. She shone her torch. The raiders and the villagers had never seen a light like this before. They were frightened and they all fell to the ground. The raiders ran back to their longship and sailed away. "Hooray!" said the villagers. "They won't come back here in a hurry." The Vikings looked at Biff's torch. "This is a magic thing," they said. "It frightened us, but it frightened the raiders even more, and it saved our village." The villagers lit a big fire on the beach. They had a party for the children. They gave Biff a shield. "Thank you," said Biff. "It's beautiful." Biff wanted to give the torch to the Vikings, but Wilf told her not to. The magic key began to glow. It was time for the adventure to end. Biff showed the Viking shield to Mr. Johnson. "It's very good," said Mr. Johnson, "but Viking shields didn't look like this." Biff looked at Wilf and smiled. The Rainbow Machine. It was raining, but the sun was shining at the same time. The children looked up and saw a rainbow across the sky. "I wonder where the rainbow begins," asked Wilf, "and where it ends." In a place far away, there was a lorry. It was a very big lorry because on the back was a very big machine. The machine made rainbows and was called the Rainbow Machine. There are 7 colors in the rainbow. It took 7 people to look after the Rainbow Machine. They cleaned it and polished it, and they made sure it worked properly. The rainbow machine had to be ready at any time. Sometimes weeks and weeks went by and a rainbow was not needed. But when the call came, the rainbow makers had to work fast. Off they went in the lorry. While it was going along, the rainbow makers got the machine ready. Then 1, 2, 3, go! They pressed the button and the rainbow shot out of the machine. When there was a rainbow, everyone stopped to look at it. Children ran to their moms and dads and said, "What a beautiful rainbow!" Sometimes the rainbow was very bright, but sometimes it was quite pale. Often the children ran towards it. They wanted to find the end of it and play in all the colors. But of course, they never could. One of the rainbow makers was a young man called Fred. He was new and he was learning to be a rainbow maker. One day the other rainbow makers said, "Look after the lorry, Fred. It won't be long." The lorry was on a double yellow line. Fred saw a traffic warden. "Oh no," said Fred. "I must move the rainbow machine." So he climbed into the driver's cab and drove away. Fred drove the lorry along the road. "This is fun," he said. "I'd better not be too long." He wanted to turn the lorry round, so he drove into a field. Oh no, the lorry stuck in the mud. The wheels spun round and round, and the lorry sank deeper and deeper. "Now, what shall I do?" thought Fred. Suddenly, there was a door in the field. Biff and Chip came through it with Wilf, Nadim, and Anina. Biff had the magic key. A new adventure had begun. The children saw that a lorry was stuck in the field. Then they saw Fred. "Can you help me?" called Fred. "Will you push the lorry?" The children pushed, but it was no good. The lorry was too big and it was far too heavy. Suddenly it began to rain, even though the sun was shining. On the lorry, things began to buzz and flash. "Oh no," said Fred. "A rainbow is needed. This is the rainbow machine. It makes rainbows. You must all help me." The children helped Fred to pull the cover off the rainbow machine. "Wow," said Biff. "Is that where rainbows come from?" "Yes," said Fred, "but I don't know how to work the computer yet." Nadim was good with computers. He looked at the rainbow keyboard. He didn't really know what to do, but he didn't like to tell Fred. "Don't worry, I can work it," he said. "Right," said Fred. 1, 2, 3. The rainbow machine set up a rainbow. "Hooray, it's working," said Wilf. The rainbow was too bright for them to see it properly, so Fred gave everyone some dark glasses. The children looked up the rainbow they had made. It didn't look quite right. Fred called to Nadim. "Are you sure you can use that computer?" The rainbow didn't look right. First it went straight up, then it went straight along, and then it went straight down. "Oh dear," gasped Anina. "It's got straight sides." Everyone stopped to look at the rainbow. Children ran to their moms and dads. "What a funny rainbow," they said. "It's got straight sides. We've never seen one like that before." The rainbow makers were having a cup of tea. They looked out of the window. Everyone was staring at the sky. "Oh no," said the rainbow makers. "What has Fred done?" They ran out into the road, but the rainbow machine had gone. "Oh no," said the rainbow makers. "Where has Fred gone?" In the sky was a broken rainbow. What a funny rainbow, everyone said. The rainbow changed again. This time it was twisted and it was very bright. I like that one, said the little boy. It looks wonderful. We must find the rainbow machine, called the rainbow makers. They looked up at the sky. The rainbow had changed again. Oh no, said one of them. I don't want to look. Back at the rainbow machine, something had gone wrong. Nadim had been too clever. The rainbow was leaking and all the red was running out. The sky was turning red. Oh no, said Nadim. I can't stop the red. Turn the rainbow machine off. Fred turned pale. I can't turn it off, he said. The rainbow makers found the lorry. They were cross with Fred. We'll take days to get the sky blue again, they said. The rainbow machine had to bleach the sky. We've never had to do this before, said one of the rainbow makers. I hope it works. The sky had turned white. The sun wasn't yellow anymore. It's a lot better than a red sky, said one of the rainbow makers. A red sky makes everyone bad-tempered. We're very sorry, said Nadim. It was all my fault. Please don't blame Fred. It's all right, said the rainbow makers. The sky will soon turn blue again. Suddenly, the magic key began to glow. The sky was blue and the sun was shining. The rainbows isn't really made like that, is it? Asked Keeper. You had better go to the end of one and find out, said Anina.
The flying carpet. Biff's carpet was torn. It had a big hole in it. Biff showed Dad, but he said, We can't afford a new one. Sorry, Biff. Biff and Chip were shopping with Dad. Dad wanted to buy a bookcase for Kipper's room. They saw one outside the junk shop. I will get this for Kipper, said Dad. Biff found an old carpet in the back of the shop. This would do for my room, she said. She asked Dad if she could have it. Dad looked at the old carpet. You don't want that thing, he said. It's old and dirty. But I like it, said Biff. Please, may I have it? So Dad said, Yes, as long as it doesn't cost too much. Biff bit the carpet. It was full of dust and dirt. I didn't think a carpet could be so dusty, she said. I wonder who had it last. Someone who didn't wipe their feet. Biff and Mom gave the carpet a shampoo. I don't think it has ever had a shampoo before, said Biff. It looks better already. The carpet looked beautiful. It is a nice carpet, said Biff. I told you so. It looks quite old, so maybe it's worth a lot of money. Biff was in her bedroom reading a book. Kipper came in and they sat on Biff's new carpet. Kipper was learning to read and he wanted to read to Biff. Suddenly the magic key began to glow. Another adventure had begun. This time Biff and Kipper were on a flying carpet. This is a new kind of adventure, said Biff. The carpet is coming with us. The carpet went very fast. Oh help, said Kipper. I hope we don't fall off. The carpet flew on and on. It flew over desert and mountains. I wonder where we are going, said Biff. At last, the carpet slowed down. Biff and Kipper looked over the side. The carpet was flying over a town. I've never seen a town like this one, said Biff. I wonder if we are going to land. But the carpet didn't land. Instead, it went slower and slower. Then it stopped by a window at the top of a tower. I wonder why we have stopped here, said Kipper. Biff and Keeper looked through the window. They saw a little boy. He was crying and he looked very unhappy. He must be a prisoner, said Biff. Biff and Keeper climbed into the little room. When the boy saw them, he jumped up in surprise. "Why are you locked up in this tower?" asked Biff. "What have you done?" "I'm the real king of this land," said the boy sadly. "But my wicked uncle locked me in this tower. When I was king, everyone was happy. I promised to rule the country wisely and well, but my uncle was jealous. He wanted to be the king instead. One day my uncle and his soldiers attacked the palace. They captured me and put me in prison. My mother escaped. She ran away to the mountains and took her army with her. My uncle is a bad man. He is cruel and greedy. He makes the people pay him money even if they are poor. If they can't pay, he puts them in prison. Nobody is happy. Every day, the people ask my mother and her army to attack the city. She will not give the order to attack because she is afraid my uncle will harm me. I'm a hostage in this palace." "Then we must set you free," said Biff. "The carpet will take us to your mother." Biff and Keeper helped the boy to climb out of the window. Then they all sat on the carpet. "How do you make it fly?" asked Keeper. "How will it know where to take us?" "Make a wish," said Biff. "Then it will go where we want it to." They made the wish and the carpet zoomed off. The carpet sped toward the mountains. At last it began to slow down. "I hope he knows how to land," said Keeper. "It looks a long way down." The carpet landed safely. When the boy's mother saw him, she couldn't believe her eyes. She looked at the carpet and she looked at Biff and Keeper. "My son is safe," she said. "Thank you." The boy's mother called all her soldiers. She told them her son was free. Now he is safe. "We can attack the city," she said. "My son will be king again." "Hooray!" shouted the soldiers. They came down from the mountains and marched to the city. There was a big battle. Biff, Keeper, and the boy watched the battle from a safe place. When the battle was over, everyone was pleased that the boy was king again. But the boy was not pleased. "Where is my uncle?" he asked. "He must be punished for what he did." Biff and Keeper saw someone running away. It was the wicked uncle. "Oh no," said Keeper. "He's getting away. How can we stop him?" Biff had the magic carpet with her. "I wonder if," she thought. Biff made a wish and the magic carpet flew off the wicked uncle. The wicked uncle rode as fast as he could, but the carpet was faster. "Stop him!" called Biff. The carpet pulled the wicked uncle from his horse. It wrapped itself round him, and then it rolled him back to the city. "Help! Help!" called the wicked uncle. "Get this carpet off me!" Biff and Keeper took the wicked uncle to the boy. "Thank you," he said. "It's my uncle's turn to go to prison. Now I can be a good king and look after my people again." The boy gave Biff, Keeper, a present. It was a beautiful toy camel. "Thank you," they said. Suddenly, the magic key began to glow. "It's time for us to go," said Biff. "But we'll take our carpet if you don't mind." The magic key took Biff and Keeper home. "What an adventure," said Keeper. "Do you think if I wish very hard, the carpet will take me to school each day?" "You'll be lucky," said Biff. A day in London. Gran came to stay. The children ran to meet her. Hooray, said Keeper. I love it when Gran comes to stay. She is good and fun. Gran brought presents for everyone. She gave Mom and Dad an ornament. Keeper had some little golf clubs, and Biff and Chip had a keyboard. Thanks, Gran, said everyone. I have another surprise for you, said Gran. She gave the children some funny-looking parcels. What are they? Asked Keeper. Boomerangs, said Gran. The children wanted to see how the boomerangs worked. Gran took them outside. She threw a boomerang and it whizzed through the air. Look out! Shouted Gran. Keeper wanted to play with the golf clubs. Gran showed him what to do. She hit the ball, but she hit it too hard and it smashed the window. Oh dear, said Gran. Next day, Wilf, Wilma, Nadim, and Anina came to play. Biff and Chip showed them the keyboard. Gran had a good idea. Let's have a band, she said. The band made a lot of noise and the children had a good time. Whatever will Gran do next? Said Dad. She's worse than the children, said Mom. Gran had promised to take the children on an outing. She said that Nadim and Anina could go too. I will take you all to London, she said. Look after Gran, said Mom as they got into the car. Try and stop her getting into trouble. We'll do our best, said Biff, but it won't be easy. When they got to London, Gran parked the car. Now, we will take the tube, said Gran. It's the best way to get around. There were lots of people waiting on the platform. When the train came in, everyone rushed to get on. Now, I know why it's called a tube, said Adina. Everyone gets squeezed. They went to Trafalgar Square. On top of the column was a statue of Nelson. I wouldn't like to be up there, said Biff. I don't like heights. There were lots of pigeons in Trafalgar Square. Gran bought some nuts. The children fed the pigeons. Oh, help, said Nadim. I didn't know that pigeons were so greedy. They went to Buckingham Palace. This is where the Queen lives, said Gran. It's enormous, said Anina. The Queen must be busy with all those rooms to clean. A big car drove past and everyone cheered and waved. The children couldn't see who was inside the car. Perhaps it's the Queen, said Biff. Gran took them on a boat. They went on the Tower Bridge. The children were excited because the bridge began to open. It began to rain and the wind blew. Everyone felt cold. Never mind, said Gran. We will think of somewhere warm to go next. They went to the waxworks. What is a waxworks? Asked Keeper as they went in. It has wax models of famous people, said Anina. They looked at the models. Don't they look funny? Said Keeper. You can tell they are models and not real people, said Anina. Who are these people? Asked Keeper. That is Queen Victoria, said Gran, and some of her grandchildren. She had lots of grandchildren, said Nadim. Queen Victoria looks very fierce, said Biff. I bet she wasn't like you, Gran. Well, I wouldn't like to be a queen, said Gran. It must be a hard job. They looked at the street scene. This is what London was like a long time ago, said Gran. A lot of people were very poor. Poor children didn't go to school in those days. They had to work instead, said Gran. That boy carrying brushes is a sweep. His job was to climb up chimneys and brush soot down. Gran went off to look at the royal family, while the children stayed at the street scene. "Do you think Gran should go off by herself?" said Biff. "She can't do much harm in here," said Chip. Gran dropped her handbag, and some money rolled among the models. Gran went to pick it up. As she bent down, she knocked into the waxworks, and they began to fall over. Gran picked the models up and put their hats back on. The children couldn't believe it. "Gran, what are you doing?" said Biff. "Don't just stand there," said Gran. "Help me pick the models up before anyone sees." "Oh, Gran," said Biff. "I let you out of my sight for a second, and this happens." They picked the models up and put the hats back on. "They look strange," said Anina. "I don't think the hats are right." "Oh no," said Gran. A lady ran up. She was very cross with Gran. "I can't think how you knocked the models over in the first place," she said. "It's never happened before." "I'm very sorry," said Gran. "I don't know," said Biff. "I don't think they will let Gran in the waxworks again." "Never mind," said Chip. "Gran didn't mean to knock them over." "Thank you for a great day out," said Nadim. "We had never been to London before." "I liked the ride on the boats best," said Keeper, "even if it was cold." "I liked everything," said Anina. "Home at last," said Gran. "We can tell Mom some of our adventures, but not all of them, and not the one about beheading the Queen." Victorian Adventure. Biff and Chip had been to London with Gran. They had some pictures, which they put into a scrapbook. They wanted to take the book to school. Gran came into Biff's room to look at the children's scrapbook. "We had a great time in London," said Biff. "Thank you, Gran." Gran was pleased. Suddenly, the magic key glowed. It was time for an adventure. The magic took the children into the little house. But did it take Gran? The magic took them back in time to a street on a foggy day. A boy was standing under a gas lamp. He looked at the children in surprise. "Excuse me," said Biff. "Do you know where we are?" "Don't you know?" said the boy. "This is London." He took his cap off. It wasn't a boy, it was a girl. "I'm called Vicky," said the girl. "I'm called Vicky after the Queen." "What Queen?" asked Biff. "Queen Victoria," said Vicky. "Don't you know anything?" "I'm hungry," said Vicky. "Have you got any money?" "No, sorry," said the children. "Come on then," said Vicky. "I know where we can get some. Follow me." They followed Vicky down winding streets. At last, they came to a blacksmith's. The blacksmith was looking at a horse's hoop. The horse needed a new shoe. "Got any jobs, mister?" asked Vicky. "I will give you a penny to pump the bellows," said the blacksmith. The children pumped and pumped until the fire glowed hot. It was hard work. The children were hot and thirsty. Vicky took them to a pump and everyone had a drink. Then Vicky pumped the water and the children washed their faces. The children were hungry. Vicky took them to a baker shop. She bought some bread with the penny. She gave some to Biff, Chip, and Keeper. The bread was hot and it smelled good. Next, Vicky took them to a street with a high wall. A boy called Jack was waiting there. He looked at Biff, Chip, and Keeper. Who are they? He asked. They are my new friends, she said. They all climbed on the wall. They had to help Keeper up. They could see a big house. It's Buckingham Palace, said Biff. We saw it when we went to London with Gran. Suddenly a light flashed at a window. It flashed on and off. It was flashing at Jack and Vicky. Jack had a lamp. He shone it back. Good, he said. Come on, follow me. The children jumped off the wall and ran to the palace. Keep down, called Jack, and run fast. And they all ran towards it. There were 3 children inside. They were the grandchildren of Queen Victoria. They're standing with the Queen, but it isn't much fun for them, said Vicky. We come to play with them every night. The Queen's grandchildren looked at Biff, Chip, and Keeper. They're my new friends, said Vicky. They've come to play tonight. Great! Now, we can have some real fun, said one of the grandchildren. The children played together. First, they played hide and seek. Then they played tag. After that, they played hopscotch. Biff and Chip taught them how to play basketball. This is a good game, said one of the grandchildren. How did you learn to play it? We saw it on television, said Chip. On what? Asked Jack. Never mind, said Chip. It's fun playing in a palace, said Keeper. But will we see Queen Victoria? I hope not, said Vicky. We shouldn't be here. If the grown-ups find out, there will be trouble. At that moment, a grown-up came in and saw them. Oh no, said everyone. Trouble. The grown-ups were very cross. They were cross with all the children. I told you there would be trouble, said Vicky. The royal grandchildren were sent to bed. A policeman came to take the others away. This is a serious matter, said the policeman. You're not allowed to play with the Queen's grandchildren. Come along with me. The children were taken to a police station. They were locked up. You can't go home until we find your mothers and fathers, said the policeman. Oh no, said Biff. We will be here forever. I don't like this adventure, said Keeper. It isn't much fun. He wanted the magic key to glow, but it wouldn't. The next day, an important man came to see the children. The Queen has sent for you, he said. Come with me. The policeman let them out. The important man took them to Buckingham Palace. Do you think we are going to have our heads chopped off? Asked Keeper. Gran was having a tea with Queen Victoria. Gran, said Chip. What are you doing in our adventure? I'm having an adventure of my own, said Gran. Queen Victoria looked at all the children and smiled. Your grandmother has told me that you are good children, she said. You can play with my grandchildren and stay to tea. The children played in the throne room. They had a sack race. Come on, Biff, called Gran. Come on, Vicky, called the Queen. This is fun, everyone said. You can have one more race, said the Queen. And then it will be time for tea. I hope you like scones and homemade strawberry jam. The magic key began to glow. It was time for the adventure to end. Goodbye, said Keeper. Thank you for having us. It was a pleasure, said Queen Victoria. Do come again. Pocket money. Dad wanted a meeting. I have had a good idea, he said. Chip groaned. I don't like the sound of this, he said. Dad had a big piece of paper. I don't like the look of it either, said Biff. It's no fun on holiday, went on Dad. If Mom and I do all the work. That's true, said Mom. There are still lots of jobs to be done. This is where my idea comes in, said Dad. This is the pocket money chart. Biff, Chip and Keeper looked at the chart. It had their names on it next to a list of jobs. The idea is that everyone has to help, said Dad. It's brilliant. But why is it called a pocket money chart? Asked Keeper. Dad tapped the chart. If you do the jobs without a fuss, he said, you get extra pocket money. Mom liked the idea. You need extra pocket money on holiday, she said. I suppose so, said Biff. So Biff washed up and Keeper dried. Chip took Floppy for a walk. Dad blew up the beds with a pump. I like the idea of this pocket money chart, said Mom. I don't, said Keeper. The next day, they went to the beach. It was cold and windy, so nobody wanted to sit on the sand. Mom and Keeper played with Floppy. He chased the ball into the sea. Biff, Chip, and Dad went to look for the shells. Biff looked along the beach for shells. She picked up a strange-looking rock. Look at this, she called. It's a rock with a spiral pattern in it. She showed it to Chip. It looks like a shell made of rock, he said. You found the fossil, said Dad. Once it was a shellfish. Now it has turned into a rock. They showed it to Mom. It's millions of years old, she said. Millions of years? Said Biff. That's amazing. They all began to look for fossils. Chip found a broken one. Biff liked looking for fossils. She wanted to find a real good one. It's time for supper, said Mom. Come on, let's go back to the campsite. On the way back, they stopped at a shop. Biff, Chip and Keeper had time to look round. The shop sold all kinds of things. It sold shells and beach toys. Keeper wanted to buy a boat. I haven't got enough pocket money, he said. Biff saw some fossils for sale. This one is amazing, she said, but it's very expensive. Well, it is millions of years old, said Chip. I'll need extra pocket money to afford this, said Biff. Back at the camp, Biff had an idea. I'll do everyone's jobs, she thought. I can get all the extra pocket money. She told Chip she would wash and dry the dishes. Good, said Chip. I hate drying up. Keeper had to take Floppy for a walk round the field. He had to keep Floppy on a lead. I will take him if you like, Biff said to Keeper. Keeper was pleased. That's good. I hate that job, he said. Dad saw Biff taking Floppy for his walk. What's she up to? He wondered. When Biff came back, he asked her why she was doing everyone's jobs. Biff went red. I wanted to earn all the extra pocket money, she said. I'm sorry, Biff, said Dad. I'm afraid you can't. You all have to do the jobs. Not just you, but Chip and Keeper don't mind, said Biff. That's not the point, said Dad. The idea is that we share the jobs. But I worked hard, said Biff. Biff was still upset when they went to the beach the next day. It's just not fair, she said. I did extra jobs, but I still won't get any more money. Come on, Biff, called Dad. It's such a lovely day to play in the sea. Biff, Chip, and Keeper played in the sea. They had a little plastic dinghy, and they took turns sit in it. "It's my turn," called Biff. "No, I'm not getting out," said Kipper. "Then we'll tip you out," laughed Chip. They all felt cold after they had been in the sea. Dad took them for a walk along the beach. Mom stayed behind. Biff began to look for fossils. "If I can't buy one, maybe I can find a really good one," she thought. They came to a little rocky cove. Some people were in the cove. A camera team was doing a fashion shoot. "I bet the girl is a model," said Chip. "They're taking photos for a magazine." The girl smiled at them. "I'd hate to be a model," said Biff. "All you do is stand around for ages." "Just look at those cameras," said Chip. "Come on," said Kipper. "We're looking for fossils, remember?" They walked a long way, but they didn't find any good fossils. It was time for lunch, so they went back to find Mom. "We saw those people taking photographs," said Chip. After lunch, Biff and Chip went with Mom to the little rocky cove. The tide was coming in again, and the cove was filling with water. Biff pointed something on a rock. It was a camera. "The photographers must have left it behind," she said. "It will soon be underwater," said Mom. "You could swim across and get it," said Chip. "But I'm not a very good swimmer," said Mom. "I might drop it." Biff had an idea. The dinghy has a long rope. "I could paddle across quite safely," she said. Mom thought about this. "Well, go and see what Dad thinks," she said. "But hurry up," said Chip, "or it will be too late." Biff ran to ask Dad. When he saw the camera, he agreed to let Biff rescue it in the dinghy. "Just be careful, Biff," called Mom. "It's all right," said Biff. "But look at the camera. It's going to be underwater any second." Biff got to the camera just in time. She put it in a plastic bag and Dad pulled the dinghy safely back. "Hooray!" said Keeper. "The camera is safe." "Biff to the rescue!" laughed Biff. At that moment, the photographer ran up. "Have you seen a camera?" she gasped. "I left one behind in the cove." Biff held up the plastic bag. "Here it is," she said. "I've just rescued it in the dinghy." The photographer was pleased. "Cameras like these are expensive," she said. "I'm so glad to get it back." She took a photograph of everyone to say thank you. "Will we be in a magazine?" asked Keeper. Then the photographer wanted to give Biff some money. "It's a reward for saving my camera," she said. Biff said she couldn't take the money. "I'm just pleased you got your camera back safely," she said. Keeper was cross with Biff. "Why didn't you take that money?" he asked. "I would have." Chip looked thoughtful. "I'm not sure what I would have done," he said. Dad smiled at Biff. "I'm very proud of you, Biff," he said. "I think you were right not to take the money," agreed Mom. "If you do something a good turn, you shouldn't expect to get a reward." The next day, Dad gave Biff, Chip, and Keeper some extra pocket money. "May we do what we like with it?" asked Chip. "Of course you can," said Dad. "Then we will give it to Biff," said Keeper. So Biff bought the fossil she wanted so badly. The Evil Genie. Biff had an idea. She wanted to try an experiment. So one day she put a bottle over a tiny apple. "I wonder if the apple will grow in the bottle," she thought. "I will have to wait and see." After a long time, Biff went to see if the experiment was working. It was. In the bottle was a big apple. Biff showed the bottle to Nadim. When he saw the apple, he was amazed. "How did you get that in there?" he asked. Suddenly, the magic key began to glow. The magic took the children into another adventure. "I wonder where the magic is taking us," called Keeper. The magic took them to a tiny island in the middle of the ocean. Floppy hated magic adventures. "Oh no," he groaned. "We're on a bare island with only one tree in the middle." "Why have we come here?" asked Biff. "Maybe there's a reason why the magic has brought us here," said Nadim. "But what?" moaned Keeper. "There's nothing here." "No, I don't like the look of this," said Biff. "This is not going to be a good adventure." "Help me climb the tree," said Nadim, "and maybe I can see a ship going past." Biff saw a bottle sticking out of the sand. It was tied to a base of the tree. "How strange," thought Biff. She untied the bottle and picked it up. Suddenly, Nadim began to wave and shout. "I can see a boat," he called, "but it's a long way off." They all waved and shouted. The boat turned and came towards them. "Hooray, it's coming!" yelled Keeper. The boat reached the island. There was a boy sailing it. "What are you doing on this tiny island?" he asked. "You wouldn't believe us, even if we told you," said Biff. The boy said he would rescue them, so they all climbed into the boat. "I hate boats," thought Floppy. Biff took the bottle with her. "It's very heavy," she said. "I wonder what's in it." The boy sailed the boat away from the island. "My name is Karma," he said. "I am the son of Hassan, the explorer." "Why are you all by yourself?" asked Nadim. "I am looking for my father," said Karma. "He has been missing for 4 years." Biff showed Karma the bottle she had found on the island. "It's a very strange looking bottle," she said. "I found it on the island." "There's something heavy inside," said Karma. "Let's open it." Karma pulled the cork out of the bottle. Then something terrible happened. There was a loud bang and a cloud of smoke. An evil genie shot out. There was a terrible smell, like rotten eggs. "Oh!" gasped Biff. "What have we done?" "Ha! I am free at last!" shouted the genie. "You will be sorry you let me out." "Why?" asked Biff. "You should be thankful." "Not me," cried the genie. "I hate all people, but most of all I hate the man who put me in this bottle." "His name is Hassan," cried the genie, "and now I'm off to deal with him." Then the genie grew very big. "First, I will deal with you," he said. He puffed out his cheeks and blew very hard. "Help!" called Karma. "He's making a storm." The wind snapped off the mast. Big waves tossed the boat up and down. "Hang on, everyone!" yelled Karma. "We are being blown onto a big island." Biff said this wasn't going to be a good adventure, shouted Keeper. The boat was swept onto the shore. It hit some rocks and turned over. They were all thrown onto the beach. Then the storm stopped. Biff and Nadim looked around. They were all wet, but nobody was hurt. Everyone looked at the boat. There was a big hole in the bottom. "If we can't mend this hole," said Karma, "we will be stuck on this island." "Things are getting worse," thought Floppy. "There are too many flies here." Then they saw a man running towards them.
He had a long black beard and long hair. It was Karma's father, Hassan. When Karma saw him, he shouted, "Father, is it you? I am your son, Karma." Hassan gave Karma a hug. Hassan told them that his ship had been wrecked on the island. "I lived in a hut made out of bits of wood. I have been alone for 4 years," he said. "Then I will take you home," said Karma. "All we have to do is mend my boat." Karma's father showed them a big chest. "It was washed up in a storm," he said. "It may be full of treasure, but I can't open it. I don't have a key." Nadim looked at the chest. "It would need a special key to open it," he said. Suddenly there was a whooshing sound and a terrible smell of rotten eggs. The evil genie appeared. His voice sounded like thunder. "Aha!" he shouted. "You trapped me in a bottle. Now I will deal with you, Hassan." Floppy hated the adventure, and he hated Genie even more. He began to bark and snarl at the genie. "Floppy!" called Biff. "Don't do it!" But Floppy barked even more. "Help!" cried the genie. "I hate dogs!" The genie flew away. "Hooray!" shouted Keeper. "Good riddance to the horrid, smelly old genie." Hassan looked upset. "But how did he escape?" he asked. "I put him in a bottle years ago." Hassan told them about the genie. "He can't touch you himself, but he can get other things to hurt you." "Like the way he made the storm?" asked Biff. "Yes," said Hassan, "but he can only do 2 bad things a day." On the island was a mountain. On the top of it lived a large bird. The genie flew up to where the bird lived. "Now, I will deal with that stupid dog," he said. He used his powers on the bird. "Get the dog," he called. The bird flew down from the mountain. They felt the cold wind from its beating wings. "Quickly!" yelled Hassan. "Get inside the hut!" Floppy was frightened of the bird. He ran away from the hut. "Floppy, come back!" yelled Biff. The bird swooped onto the bridge. It picked up Floppy in its claws. Biff, Nadim, and Keeper ran out of the hut, but the bird flew off with Floppy. "Floppy!" yelled Keeper. "This is terrible," said Keeper. "We will have to rescue Floppy. This must be because of the genie," said Nadim. "We will have to get him back into the bottle." "There must be a way to do it," said Biff. "If only we knew what it was." Suddenly the magic key began to glow. "Oh, stop!" called Nadim. "We can't go now. We haven't rescued Floppy." The magic began to take them home. "Don't glow, magic key!" cried Biff. "We can't leave Floppy behind." The magic took the children home. "What can we do about Floppy?" asked Keeper. "We can't leave him stuck in an adventure." "Can we make the key take us back?" said Nadim. "How?" asked Biff. "We can never make it glow. It only glows when it wants to." Just then Mom came into Biff's room. "It's time for Nadim to go home," she said. "And it's time for Keeper's bath." Keeper didn't want a bath, and Nadim didn't want to go home. They wanted to go back into the adventure. "What's up, Biff?" asked Chip. "You look upset." Biff told Chip about Floppy. "We must go back and rescue him," said Chip. "We've got to find a way to get the genie back into the bottle." "If only the magic key would glow," said Biff. Save Floppy. The last magic adventure had gone wrong. Floppy had been left behind. A giant bird had flown off with him.
this was because a horrid genie had escaped from a bottle. And it was all my fault, said Biff. We've got to rescue Floppy, said Chip. We must go back into the adventure. But we can't make the key glow, said Biff. I know, said Chip, but we must try. We have to find a way to get the genie back in the bottle. Biff and Chip looked at the magic key. Oh, if only it would glow, said Biff. Then the magic key did begin to glow. The magic took the children back into the last adventure. The magic took them to an island. Biff had been there before. It was the island where the giant bird had flown away with Floppy. Karma was still there. He was with his father Hassan. Hassan and Karma were mending their boat. Karma ran to meet them. You have come back, he said to Biff. Where have you been? You wouldn't believe it, said Biff, even if we told you. This is my brother Chip, said Biff. We have come back to rescue Floppy. Karma shook his head. That will be very dangerous, he said. The giant bird took him up to the top of that mountain. I know, said Biff, and that's where we are going. We must get up there as fast as we can. Stop, shouted Karma. Don't go. Have you forgotten about the evil genie? We will worry about him later, said Chip. Biff and Chip went as fast as they could, but it was hard work. They had to climb over big rocks. At last, they came to the mountain. Biff was tired. She sat on a rock for a rest. The mountain looked steep and rocky. How can we climb up? Asked Biff. Then Chip found a dried up stream. Come on, called Chip. This gully looks an easy way up. Biff and Chip began to climb up the gully. Suddenly there was a loud noise and a terrible smell. It was the evil genie. He was standing at the top of the gully. Ha! I can soon get rid of you, he shouted. The genie clapped his hands. Water began to gush down the gully. Biff and Chip had no time to climb out. The water rushed toward them. Quickly, Biff! Climb onto this rock and hang on, shouted Chip. Biff and Chip hung onto the rock. The water roared past them. Biff and Chip were frightened. What are we going to do? Shouted Biff. I don't know, called Chip. It's too far to jump to safety. Then they saw Karma. He had followed them to the mountain. Hang on, he shouted. I will soon have you safe. He threw a rope across the gully. It caught on a branch on the other side. Biff and Chip climbed to safety on the rope. We are so pleased to see you, said Biff. I thought we'd never get off that rock. The evil genie did this, said Chip. It's a good job I came when I did, said Karma. I came to help you rescue Floppy. They began to climb the mountain again. Biff and Chip were pleased that Karma had come to help them. The giant bird was flying high above them. What have you done with Floppy? Yelled Biff crossly. It took them a long time to get to the top of the mountain. At last, they reached the nest of the giant bird. Said Chip. Look at all these bones. I hope the bird hasn't eaten Floppy. Floppy! Called Biff. Where are you? Then they saw Floppy. He was fast asleep and he had a contented look on his face. In front of him was a pile of bones. Oh, Floppy, said Biff. Wake up! Floppy woke up and wagged his tail. We must get back quickly, said Karma. The evil genie may use his powers again. I'm glad we are going, thought Floppy.
but I'm sorry I can't take all the lovely bones. They went down the mountain as fast as they could. Then they saw Hassan. He had come to look for them. I am so glad I have found you, he said. I have been worried about you. We are all safe, said Karma, and we have rescued Floppy. Hassan was worried. He looked at Karma. The genie may use his powers again. We must get away from the island as quickly as we can, he said. They began to load things into the boat. Chip looked at the old chest on the beach. It had been washed up in a storm. I don't know what's inside it, said Hassan. It could be treasure. Why don't you open it? Asked Chip. I don't have a key, said Hassan. Chip had an idea. Lend me the magic key, Biff, he said. He put the key in the lock and turned it. The lid of the chest sprang open. Everyone looked in the chest, but it was completely empty. Suddenly there was a crackling sound and a terrible smell of the old burnt socks. The evil genie appeared. Ha! He shouted. You have escaped my powers too many times. Now I will deal with you once and for all. Chip thought of a way to trick the genie. Quickly, he shut the lid of the chest. Why did you shut that chest? Asked the genie. What is inside it? It's something very valuable, said Chip. Is it treasure? Asked the genie. It's a lot more valuable than treasure, said Chip. The genie looked in the chest. There's nothing valuable in here, he shouted. Oh, but there is, said Chip. You're just not looking hard enough. The genie bent inside the chest to look. Suddenly, Chip pushed the genie into the chest and slammed down the lid. Then he locked it with the magic key. How dare you! Shouted the genie. You will pay for this when I get out. But you can't get out, called Chip. Oh, yes I can, shouted the genie. I can't get out of the bottles, but it's easy to get out of a chest. But you're locked in, said Chip. We don't believe you can get out. I will use my powers, said the genie. The genie made himself thin and started to slip through the keyhole. Chip held a bottle of the keyhole, and the genie slid into it. He fell for my trick, said Chip. I thought he would. Hassan and Karma shook Chip's hand. That was brilliant, Chip, said Karma. The genie is safely in the bottle. Now we can all go home. I'm glad it was all right in the end, said Biff. And I'm glad Floppy is safe. The magic key began to glow. It was time to go. I bet Floppy hated this adventure, said Chip. Floppy looked at them both. I don't know, he thought. I quite enjoyed it, really. The magic took them home. Kipper ran into Bib's room. Hooray, you rescued Floppy, he said. What happened to the evil genie? We put him back in the bottle, said Chip. The children looked at the little chest. I'm glad the bottle didn't come back from the adventure, said Kipper. Biff tried to lift the lid of the chest, but it wouldn't open. And now the key won't fit, she laughed. What was it like? The children were excited. They were going to take a part in a play. It was all about the history of the town. The play was going to be held in the park, and the children had to rehearse their scene. I hope we don't forget what to do, said Chip. Gran had come to watch the rehearsal. My goodness, she said. I don't believe it. Biff is wearing a dress. That's because we are children from World War II, said Biff. Girls didn't wear trousers then.
Our town was bombed in the war, said Chip. The bombing was called the Blitz. Gran could remember it. I was only a girl, she said, but I remember the Blitz well. You wore awful clothes like these, said Biff. We have to carry these boxes, said Wilma, but they are empty. They weren't empty in the war, said Gran. They had gas masks in them. We had to take them to school every day. Gas masks? Gasped Wilf. Fantastic! The children rehearsed their parts. In the play, they were sent away to live in the country. It wasn't safe to stay in the town because of the bombing. We have to pretend to be upset, said Wilma. Chip tried to pull a sad face. I'm going to pretend to cry, said Wilf. He made a loud noise, blowing his nose. Stop it, said Biff. You're making me laugh. The others began to laugh too. We shouldn't laugh, said Wilma. Gran spoke to the children. The war was a terrible time for everyone, she said. It wasn't funny. We're sorry, Gran, said Chip, but it was a long time ago. After the rehearsal, Wilf and Wilma went home with Biff and Chip. Chip thought about the war. It must have been a hard time for children then, he said. It's hard to imagine what it was like, said Wilf. I can't wait to take these clothes off, said Biff. I hate wearing these dresses. Suddenly the magic key began to glow. The magic took the children off on another adventure. It took them back to a street in London. We've come back to the war, gasped Chip. This looks like the scene in our play. They saw a little boy all by himself. I was with my school, said the boy, but I got lost. May I come with you? Suddenly there was a long wailing sound. That's an air raid warning, said Wilma. It means we are going to be bombed. People began to run. A man shouted at them. Hey, he yelled, get into the shelter. Everyone went into the shelter. Above the shelter, bombs were landing. Everything rocked and shook. I'm scared, said the little boy. So are we, said Wilma. I hope it's safe down here, said Biff. The noise went on for about 20 minutes. Then it stopped. Everything was quiet for a little while. Then the loud wailing noise began. The air raid was over. That was really frightening, said Wilf. The children came out of the shelter. They couldn't believe their eyes. The street had been bombed. There was smoke and dust everywhere. Wilma put her arm round the little boy. One building was gone. It was just a pile of bricks. Another building was on fire. Firemen were starting to put the fire out. This is terrible, said Wolf. I didn't think it would be like this. A woman ran up to the children. She took the little boy's hand. Oh, I'm so glad I found you, she said. She looked at the others. You must all have got lost too, she said. Come on, the train will be leaving soon. The station was crowded with children. They all had gas masks, and they looked upset and unhappy. We are being sent away, said the little boy. It's because of the bombing. It's too dangerous to live here. A woman gave them all a brown paper bag. Wilma looked inside hers. It's a dry, old sandwich and an apple, she said, but no sweets or chocolate bars. Of course not, said the woman. What did you expect? A man blew a whistle. Gas masks on, he ordered. And don't worry, there's no gas. This is just a practice. We don't have gas masks, whispered Chip. We only have empty boxes. Wolf opened his box. Inside it was a gas mask. They all had gas masks in their boxes. I can't believe it, he gasped. Hurry up, shouted the man crossly. You must put them on quickly. Biff hated wearing gas masks. It felt tight and uncomfortable. It had a funny smell and it felt hot. When she talked, her voice sounded funny and the gas mask steamed up. She couldn't wait to take it off. Oh, said Biff. That was terrible. It was so hard to breathe in that gas mask. The man blew his whistle again. It was time to get on the train. All the children had to line up. The little boy began to cry. I don't want to go away, sniffed the boy. I don't even know where we are going. But it's not safe to stay, said Chip. My mom has to stay, said the boy. Wilma gave the boy a packet of tissues. I've never seen tissues before, said the boy. At last, the train came in. It's a steam engine, said Wolf. The train puffed out smoke and it made a clanking noise. As it stopped, it gave a loud hiss. Smoke and steam filled the air. The grown-up began to call the children's names out. Then they were told to get on the train. I don't think our names are going to be called out, said Wilma. They don't know who we are. Wilma was right. The man came across to them. Why aren't you on the train? He asked. The woman looked at her list. There shouldn't be anyone left, she said. I don't know who these children are. We can't leave them behind, said the man. We can find out who they are later, but we'll have to split them up. We don't want to be split up, said Biff. We want to stay together. I'm sorry, said the man. I don't think you can. We can't always keep children together, said the woman. Not even brothers and sisters. That's terrible, said Chip. Suddenly the magic key began to glow. The adventure was over. I didn't like that adventure, said Chip. I was so scared being in that air raid. I felt sorry for the children, said Biff. Imagine having to leave home and going to live with people you don't know. That poor little boy, said Wilma. Chip asked Gran to tell them about the war. I never saw a banana, said Gran. There wasn't much food. We didn't have lots of sweets or chocolate. We didn't have nice soap and shampoo. We only had a bath once a week. It was the night of the play. Biff, Chip, Wilf and Wilma didn't laugh when they played their parts. They remembered the magic adventure. They thought of the children waiting for the train to come in. Gran was pleased with them. You were really good, she said. Biff told Gran a secret. The magic key showed us how hard it was in the war, she said. I'm glad we only had to act it. Flood. It had been raining for days. All this rain, said Biff. I wish it would stop. I'm taking Floppy for a walk, said Mom. Who wants to come? Biff and Chip looked at her. Not us, they said. It's raining. In the end, Biff said she would go with Mom. They went into the park. It was not much fun in the rain. Look at Floppy, said Mom. He can't help getting muddy. The ground is so wet and squelch. Biff and Mom walked across the park. They wanted to cross the little bridge, but the stream had flooded. I've never seen it this high, said Mom. Biff was excited. Oh, look, she said. The bridge is underwater. Biff began to wade across the bridge, but Mom called her back. It's not a good idea, said Mom. The stream is flowing really fast and you can't see the edge of it. What if you slipped in? If it goes on raining, the water will flood across the park, said Biff. Mom looked thoughtful. I hope the rain stops, she said. We don't want the flood to get as far as our house. The next morning, when Biff and Chip were at school, it was still raining. The children couldn't go out to play. Another wet playtime, sighed Chip. I wish it would stop raining. So do I, sighed Mrs. May too. In the afternoon, it stopped raining. Hooray! Now we can play football, said Wolf. But there were big puddles on the field. I'm sorry, said Mrs. May. We can't play football today. The ground is too wet. That evening, Biff, Chip, and Keeper were watching television. The weather forecast came on. Some bad storms were coming, with a lot more rain. Not more rain, sighed Chip. The storm came in the middle of the night. The rain beat on the roof of the house and it lashed against the windows. It was so loud that Biff and Chip couldn't sleep. Mom brought them a hot drink. Poor Floppy, said Biff. He hates this. In the morning, Dad took Floppy for a walk. Chip went with him. When they got to the park, Chip gasped. The park was flooded. It was like a giant lake. Chip thought the floods were fun. Dad looked worried. I don't like the look of this, he said. We don't want the water to get as far as our house. Chip grinned at Dad. It couldn't go that far, he said. Could it? But it didn't stop raining, and the floods grew worse. The water reached the edge of the park. Then it began to creep up the road. It came through the fence and flooded the end of the garden. The road near Wilf and Wilma's house was flooded. The children watched the cars going through the flood. One car had broken down and was stuck in the middle. That day the school was closed. The hall was flooded and there was no heating. What are we going to do all day? Asked Wilf. I'm sorry, said Mrs. May. We can't open the school today. When the children got home, they saw a lorry in the street. It was loaded with sandbags. People were taking the sandbags to their houses. We need you all to help, said Mom. Biff and Chip helped to carry the sandbags. They were very heavy. Dad put them in front of the doors. I just hope the water doesn't come up this far, said Dad. Mom looked upset. The floods may get worse, she said. So there's only one thing to do. She picked up a chair. We'll have to take things upstairs, said Mom. They all began to carry things upstairs. It was hard work and Keeper began to get worried. What will happen if the water floods into my bedroom? He asked. Don't worry, said Biff. It won't. Some things were too big and heavy to carry upstairs. What shall we do with the sofa? Asked Dad. Mom had a good idea. She got a folding table. We can't put the sofa up on this, she said. It rained in the night. Dad couldn't sleep. He was too worried about the flood. Then he heard the sound of water. He went downstairs and looked. Oh no, the flood water had come in. Everyone woke up. The lights didn't work. so Mom lit a lamp. They all looked downstairs. The hall was full of water. "This is terrible," said Chip. "Lots of houses must be flooded." The next day, Biff, Chip and Keeper looked out of the window. The whole street was flooded. "I can't believe it," said Keeper. "It looks like a river." "It's amazing," said Biff. A man paddled past in a canoe. It looked funny to see a canoe in the street. The man shouted up to them. "Are you all right?" he asked. "Yes, thank you," Chip called back. "But we wish the flood would go away." Some fire officer came to the street. They wore big, long boots. "Can we take you to somewhere warm and dry?" asked a fire officer. "Yes, please," said Mom. "I don't think we can stay here." The fire officers brought a dinghy to the front door. Everyone got in. Dad carried Floppy. "I never thought we'd sail up our street in a boat," said Chip. Wilf and Wilma were in their house. They were looking out of the window. Biff, Chip and Keeper waved at them. "You can come and rescue us next," called Wilma. A cat was stuck on a fence. The fire officer stopped the dinghy. Dad rescued it and gave it to Mom. Floppy looked at the cat, but he didn't even bark. "He is being a good dog," said Keeper. They went to a hall in the town. A lot of people were there. Wilf and Wilma came in with their mom and dad. Biff showed Wilma the rescued cat. "Poor little thing," said Wilma. "We may have to stay here tonight," said Wilf. "We can't go back home to sleep." Keeper was upset. There were too many people in the hall. He didn't want to sleep there. "I wanted to go home," he said. Later in the day, Gran came to the hall. "You can all stay with me until the flood goes down," she said. The children were pleased. "It will be fun staying with Gran," said Keeper. "Thank you, Gran." When the floods were over, they went back home. They gasped when they saw the house. The floors were covered in mud. "What a mess," said Keeper. "I hate it." "Never mind," said Dad. "Bad things like this happen sometimes." He gave the children a big hug. Then he gave them some mops and brooms. "And what's more important than all this mud? We are," said Mom. Egyptian Adventure. Nadim and Anina came to play at Biff and Chip's house. Nadim had a book about ancient Egyptians. "It isn't just a book to read," said Nadim. "It's a special sort of book." "It's a model book," said Nadim. He opened it to show everyone. "I get it," said Chip. "You press out the shapes, then you fold and glue them to make a model." The book had lots of shapes to press out and fold. Nadim pointed to one. "Can you see what this will be?" he asked. "Of course we can," said Anina. "It will be a pyramid." Chip found some glue. Then Nadim pressed out the shapes and the others began to fold them. First, they made the pyramids. Anina had a difficult shape to fold. "This is a sphinx," she said. They pressed out some tiny trees and people. Biff glued them all onto a sheet of paper. It made a scene of ancient Egypt. The children were pleased with it. "I'm really pleased with the sphinx," said Anina. At last, the model was finished. It looked so good, they called Mom upstairs to have a look. "What a good job you made of it," said Mom. "I like the pyramids and Sphinx." "The Sphinx was hard to make," said Anina. Floppy ran into the room. He didn't see the model on the floor, and he trod on it with his big paws. He knocked over a tree and crushed the Sphinx. "Oh, Floppy!" everyone yelled. Floppy looked unhappy. He knew he had upset the children. "Never mind," said Chip. "It wasn't Floppy's fault. The Sphinx looks even better than before." Suddenly, the magic key began to glow. The key took the children back in time. It took Floppy too. "It's not my day," thought Floppy. "First, I get in trouble. Now, it's a magic adventure." The magic took them back to ancient Egypt. They were standing by a pyramid. The pyramid was still being built. Far off they could see 2 more pyramids. "This is amazing," said Nadim. "I didn't think the pyramids were so big." Some people were pulling on long ropes. They were moving a big block of stone. "That's amazing too," said Chip. "I didn't know the pyramids were made with such a big blocks of stone." "Look over there," gasped Anina. She pointed to a huge stone sphinx. "Let's go and look at the sphinx," she said. They all began to run towards it. Floppy didn't go with them. He had seen a cat. The cat hissed at Floppy. Floppy couldn't stop himself. He chased it. He lived on some blocks of stone. Floppy jumped up too, but the cat was too fast for him. Biff saw Floppy chase the cat. She called to the others. They all went back to get Floppy, but he was stuck on the blocks of stone. He couldn't get down. "Oh, Floppy, you silly dog," said Biff. The children looked up at Floppy. "He's a long way up," laughed Nadim. "I will just have to climb up and help him down," said Biff. Then a man ran over. He looked at Floppy and gasped. The man called to some people. They ran over to the children. At first, they were talking and shouting. Then they all went quiet. "What are they doing?" asked Biff. "Why are they looking at us like this?" The people put their hands together and raised them in the air. Then they sank down on their knees. "They are bowing to us," said Chip. "They must think we're important." "How strange," said Nadim. The people were not bowing down to the children. They were bowing to Floppy. "I don't believe it," whispered Chip. "They must think Floppy is important. I wonder why." The people took Floppy away. The children followed. Floppy couldn't believe all this was happening to him. A magic adventure is bad enough, he thought. And now this? The people took Floppy to the king's palace. The king came out onto the steps. "In Egypt, a king is called a pharaoh," said Chip. "This pharaoh looks very fierce. Everyone bowed when they saw him." "We'd better bow down too," said Biff. "We don't want to get in trouble." A man spoke to the pharaoh. "Great pharaoh," he said, "see what we have brought." "The yellow dog," gasped the pharaoh. The pharaoh took Floppy inside the palace. Then he clapped his hands. "Look after the yellow dog," he said. "Give him whatever he wants." Thought Floppy. "I'm beginning to enjoy this adventure." "I just don't get it," said Biff. "Why are they making this fuss of Floppy?" The pharaoh clapped his hands again. Some people ran into the palace. One of them began to paint a picture of Floppy. Suddenly Biff sneezed. The Pharaoh saw the children. "Strangers in my palace," he shouted. "How did they get in?" A guard grabbed Chip and Anina. Another one grabbed Biff and Nadim. The guards took the children outside. They took them to one of the pyramids. The people were moving the big blocks of stone. "You all look strong," said the guard. "You can work here." The children had to help pull one of the big blocks. They had to put rollers down to slide it along. "This is hard work," moaned Biff. "These rollers are heavy." It was time for a rest. The children had to drink from a skin bag. "Ah," said Chip. "This water is warm and it tastes funny too. I'd rather have an ice-cold can." The Egyptians were carving a giant stone block. The children had to pick up all the chips of stone that fell off. "This is hard work too," said Nadim. "It's no fun being an Egyptian slave." Anina looked at the carving. "I wonder if they are making a sphinx," she said. "A sphinx has a body of lion, but that doesn't look like a lion's tail." "That tail looks familiar," said Biff. The carving was finished. "I said it looked familiar," gasped Biff. "It isn't a sphinx at all. It's Floppy." At that moment, the Pharaoh came to see the carving. Some Egyptians carried Floppy. Suddenly, the magic key began to glow. Floppy jumped down and ran over to the children. "Come back, yellow dog," called the Pharaoh. "I'm glad it's time to go," thought Floppy. "It was all getting too much of the good thing." "What's an adventure?" said Nadim. "I didn't like being an Egyptian slave." Anina picked up the model sphinx. "A sphinx has a lion's body and a man's head," she said. "But this does look a bit like Floppy." 12 Dancing Princesses. Chapter 1. Holy Boots. Tramper could feel the stony road through the holes in his boots. A newspaper blew by. Tramper picked it up and sat down to cover the holes in his boots with the paper. A frail old lady glared and stared at him. "You think you have shoe troubles?" she said. "The king has 12 girls and all of them have holes in their slippers." The old lady's feet were bare, cut, and purple with cold. Tramper felt sorry for her, so he gave her his shabby boots. To thank him, she gave Tramper her dirty cloak. As she clumped away down the road, she called, "Stay awake, drink no drop, sip no sup, taste no cup." An odd way to say goodbye, thought Tramper. Chapter 2. The Mystery. Rain drizzled down. Tramper put on the cloak and tried to read what was left of the wet newspaper. As it fell apart in his hands, he read, "Palace notice. Wanted. Answer to the mystery of the worn slippers. Reward. Princesses hand in marriage. Snag. All those who fail will be locked up." "Why not?" thought Tramper. "I bet I could solve the mystery. I've got nothing to lose. I don't even have any boots." And when he looked down, his feet were gone too. His feet, legs, and body had gone. He was invisible. "The cloak is magic," he gasped. The king's 12 daughters were a mystery. Each night they slipped off their silk slippers and went to bed. But each morning their silk slippers were full of holes, and the girls were worn out. How could it happen? The girls' bedroom door was locked, so they could not get out. How could it go on? The king was spending all his money on slippers. Princes came from everywhere to solve the mystery. Each stood watching the princesses as they slept. Each tried to keep awake by choosing which one of the princesses he would marry. But the next morning, he woke up on the couch, surrounded by sleeping princesses and 24 holy sleepers. And after the third time, the royal guard threw him into prison. Princes stopped coming and knights came instead. Then squires. They were all determined to solve the mystery, but they all failed. The king was furious. New slippers had to be bought every day. Prisons were full of bursting with princesses, knights, and squires. But Tramper didn't know any of this. Tramper went to the castle and stood before the king. "You have no boots," said the king in deep disgust. "And you keep running out of slippers," said Tramper. Chapter 3. Sleeping Princesses. The princesses were kind to Tramper. "A brave man deserves a good supper," they said, and brought him baked salmon and a glass of milk. He ate the salmon, but remembering the advice of the old lady, he did not drink one drop of milk. Secretly, he let the cat drink the milk, until with a meow, he fell off the windowsill, sound asleep. "So that's the trick," thought Tramper. The princesses went to bed and Tramper lay down on the couch. He snored loudly, pretending to sleep. Later that night, the distant sound of a strange music began. The princesses jumped out of the bed and slipped their feet into the brand new slippers. Then they all climbed into the wardrobe. Chapter 4. The Magical Wardrobe. The princesses pushed between the hanging clothes and ran down a passageway. Tramper followed them with the old lady's magic cloak over his head. The princesses ran across a garden of ruby roses, through an orchard of diamond fruit, and up some glass steps towards a magnificent castle. Tramper ran after them. The princesses toiled into a great hall. There, waiting for them, were 12 shadowy shapes, 12 elves. Tramper watched as they danced. The elves' shoes were hard, but the sole of the silken slippers were soon worn thin. "So that's the trick," said Tramper. Before dawn, 12 very tired girls in worn-out slippers went back to bed. Tramper hurried ahead of them and lay down on the couch. There, the king found him, surrounded by tattered slippers, snoring loudly. Well, you might think that Tramper told the king about what he had seen, but no. He had enjoyed the salmon so much that he was hoping for a second supper. "2 more tries," said the king. "That's all." Chapter 5. 2 more tries. The next night, the princesses brought Tramper turkey and a cup of tea for his supper. He gobbled down the turkey but sipped no sup. He gave the palace parrot his tea and it fell off its perch, sound asleep. The princesses and Tramper fell asleep too, or so it seemed. Later that night, the distant sound of silvery music began. The 12 princesses jumped out of bed, into the wardrobe, and ran across the garden of ruby roses, through the orchard of diamond fruit, and up the glass steps into the castle. Tramper followed them with the magic cloak over his head. Again, The elves were waiting. Again the princesses danced and danced until their slippers were ragged. Before dawn, the princesses made their weary way home. Tramper hurried ahead of them and lay down on the couch. There, the king found him, surrounded by tattered slippers, snoring loudly. Well, you might think the tramper told the king about what he had seen, but no. He had enjoyed the turkey so much that he was hoping for a third supper. One more night, said the king. And what's wrong with the parrot? The next night, the princesses brought him chicken pie and a glass of water. He swallowed down the pie, but he did not drink or sip or even taste the water. He poured the water into a vase, and the roses drooped their sleepy heads. Again, the princesses slept, or so it seemed, until the distant sound of shimmering music began once again. They climbed out of their beds, into their slippers, and through the wardrobe. They ran across the garden of ruby roses, through the orchard of diamond fruit, and up the castle steps. In the castle hall, the 12 elves were waiting for the princesses, who danced until the fire burned out and the sole of their slippers were worn to tatters. Even Tramper joined in. Your time is up, said the king the next morning, when he found Tramper asleep on the couch. 24 slippers lay worn out around him. Do you think Tramper put on his magic cloak and ran? No. Do you think he told the unbelievable truth? He did. I followed your daughters through their wardrobe into a garden of ruby roses and an orchard of diamond fruit, to a castle of magical elves, where they danced and danced until the sole of their slippers worn thin. Liar, said the princesses. Rubbish, said the king. I can prove it, said Tramper, and put his hand into his pocket and pulled out 1 ruby rose and 1 diamond pear. Shall I nail the wardrobe shut, your majesty, before your daughters are danced away? Clever man, roared the king. Marry my oldest daughter. Then one day you will be king. But Tramper chose the youngest, because she was the best dancer. There was lots of dancing at the wedding, all of it barefoot. Then everyone put on their silken shoes and went home as happy as can be. The Tale of Little Red Riding Hood. Chapter 1. Please, mother, can I go now? Mourned Little Red Riding Hood. She was standing in the doorway of the cottage where the two of them lived. I really don't want to be late. I promised Granny I'd be there by tea time. Little Red Riding Hood was quite cross. This was so annoying. It had taken months of pestering to get Mother to let her visit Granny on her own. And now she seemed to have changed her mind. I'm not sure I should let you go, said Mother. The forest is full of all sorts of dangerous things. Who knows what might happen? Little Red Riding Hood sighed. We've been over this already, Mother, she said. I promise I'll be careful, and I've got my mobile phone. Well, murmured Mother. Oh, all right then, she said at last. But call me as soon as you get to Granny's. I will, said Little Red Riding Hood, and she skipped off down the path. Mother waved, and Little Red Riding Hood waved back. But as soon as she was deep in the woods, and out of sight, she hissed, "Yes!" and punched the air. Chapter 2. Little Red Riding Hood was determined to enjoy being out on her own. She felt grown up as she strolled down the path swinging the basket of goodies Mother had given her for Granny. But suddenly a dark shadow fell across her. She stopped in her tracks. "Hello there," said someone with a very deep voice. "And who are you?" Little Red Riding Hood turned around and saw a large hairy figure behind her. Something about him was familiar, but she couldn't think what it was. "I'm Little Red Riding Hood," she replied politely, but then she remembered something that Mother had said. I'm not supposed to talk to strangers." "Quite right too," growled the hairy figure. "What a sensible girl you are. I will leave you to your walk in the woods. Are you going anywhere nice?" "Just to my granny's," said Little Red Riding Hood. "She lives in a cottage on the other side of the forest, and I mustn't be late. Bye." Little Red Riding Hood hurried off. She looked over her shoulder and was surprised to see that the hairy figure had disappeared. He had seemed quite friendly, but she still had a nagging feeling about him. And then it came to her. That hairy figure had been the big bad wolf Mother had shown her his picture on the website. So she should have known it was him straight away. Phew! It looked like she had a narrow escape. But why hadn't he pounced on her? Perhaps he had been put off by the woodcutter walking in the trees nearby. The woodcutter had a truck and he was pretty good with that axe. Little Red Riding Hood thought it might be a good idea to store the woodcutter's number in her phone. You never know when it might come in handy, Little Red Riding Hood said to herself. Soon, she had forgotten all about the big bad wolf and she carried on walking, enjoying the warm day and being out alone. She even stopped to pick some wild flowers for Granny. Chapter 3. After a while, she arrived at Granny's cottage. She was just about to knock on the door when she noticed it was open. How strange! Perhaps Granny had left it open for her. "Hello, Granny," she called out. "I brought you some goodies." "Hello, sweetheart," a deep voice replied. "I'm here in the bedroom." Little Red Riding Hood stopped at the bedroom door and peered into the room. Somebody was in Granny's bed, wearing Granny's nightdress and Granny's nightcap. But it wasn't Granny. It was the big bad wolf. "Well, don't just stand there," growled the big bad wolf. "Come in." Several things ran through Little Red Riding Hood's mind all at once. What had he done to Granny? She realized it was her fault the big bad wolf was here. She had told him exactly where Granny lived. Little Red Riding Hood knew she was in great danger too. Great, she thought, her first trip out on her own, and it was going to end in disaster. The girl who was eaten by the big bad wolf. People would remember her as the girl who was eaten by the big bad wolf. Once upon a time, they'd say, Little Red Riding Hood went to see her granny, bumped into the big bad wolf, and didn't live happily ever after. She had to do something, and quickly. But what? Then she looked down into the basket of goodies and saw her mobile phone nestling there. Could you hang on a minute, Granny? Said Little Red Riding Hood. There's something I need to do. The big bad wolf looked at her, surprised. Little Red Riding Hood smiled, stepped out of the room, and started sending a text message. Chapter 4. The big bad wolf had got out of the bed and was creeping towards her. What big ears you got, Granny? Said Little Red Riding Hood to slow him down. Really? Growled the big bad wolf. Oh, the better for hearing you with. Yes, and what big eyes do you've got? Said Little Red Riding Hood. Ah, oh, the better for seeing you with, growled the big bad wolf. He was still creeping towards her, and getting closer and closer and closer. And what big teeth you've got, said Little Red Riding Hood. Oh, the better for gobbling you up, roared the big bad wolf, and he pounced. But just then somebody crashed through the bedroom window. It was the woodcutter, of course, and he chased the big bad wolf around the bedroom. The big bad wolf squealed with fright, leaped out of the window, and ran away as fast as he could go. They found Granny tied up in her wardrobe. She was fine, but a bit upset. As for Little Red Riding Hood, well, she was looking forward to a lot more trips out on her own. She had managed okay in the end, hadn't she? Although she wasn't sure that Mother would agree. How Anansi Got His Stories. Chapter 1. A long time ago, all stories belonged to Niame, king of the sky. All day long people would gather round him and listen to what he had to say. Anansi the spider was jealous of Niame. He wanted people to come and listen to him instead. I want to own all stories, said Anansi. I want to be king of stories. Okay, said Niame. You can be the king of stories if you bring me the hornets with their sting, like fire, and leopard with his big sharp teeth, and snake with his poisonous bite. Anansi knew that the hornets, leopard, and snake were the most dangerous creatures in the forest, and they would be difficult to catch. But Anansi wanted to be king of stories so badly that he agreed. Okay, I will do it, Anansi said. Anansi was afraid. How am I going to catch those three and bring them back to Niame? He thought. I'm not the strongest of the most fierce animal, and I'm not very brave, he said to himself. Chapter 2. Anansi had an idea. I will just have to use my skill, my wit, and my cleverness to catch them out. Anansi laughed, and he went to fill a calabash with water. Then he made his way to the big tree where the hornets live. Anansi poured some of the water from his calabash over a big banana leaf, and he held the leaf over his head to let some water splash over him. When he was dripping wet, Anansi climbed up the tree and sat above the hornet's nest and poured some more water onto the big banana leaf. He let the water trickle down until it wet all the hornets in their nest. It's raining! It's raining! The hornets cried. Come and take shelter in my calabash, shouted Anansi. It's nice and dry in there. The hornets flew out of their soaking nest at once, straight into Anansi's empty calabash. When all of the hornets were in Anansi's calabash trap, Anansi quickly plugged the hole with the banana leaf so that the hornets could not get out. Got you! Anansi laughed. Chapter 3. Anansi ran all the way back to see Niame. I have them, Anansi sang. I have the hornets. I use my skill to catch them. I deserve to be king of stories. But you don't have leopard or snake, said Niame. So you cannot have my stories. Oh no, thought Anansi. I had almost forgotten. I still have leopard with his big sharp teeth and snake with his poisonous bite to catch. What am I going to do? I am not the strongest or the most fierce, and I am not very brave, he said to himself. Chapter 4. I will just have to use more of my skill, my wit, and my cleverness to catch them out, Anansi chuckled. Anansi went to get a big shovel, and he found a tree where Leopard likes to take his afternoon nap. Not too far away from Leopard, Anansi began to dig quietly. Anansi dug deeper and deeper until he had dug a great big hole. Then he covered the hole with grass and twigs and leaves. When Leopard came out of the long grass to take his nighttime walk, he stepped on the hole covered with grass and twigs and leaves and thud! Down he fell, and Anansi began to spin giant spider web. Let me help you, Anansi shouted down the hole. Grab hold my web and I will pull you out. Ah, thank you, said Leopard, and he grabbed hold of Anansi's web. But Leopard got tangled in the web, and when Anansi pulled him out of the hole, Leopard could not move. Gotcha! Anansi laughed. Chapter 5. Let me go! Let me go! Leopard roared. Let you go? Anansi laughed. Why would I do that when I have gone to so much trouble to catch you? You wicked trickster! Roared Leopard. I might have known it was you all along, Anansi. But Anansi did not care about Leopard's remarks. He was one step closer to gaining his crown. Anansi dragged Leopard all the way back to Niame. I have him, Anansi sang. I have Leopard. But you don't have Snake, said Niame. So you cannot have my stories. Oh no, thought Anansi. I still have Snake to catch. Deadliest creature of them all. What am I going to do? I am not the strongest or the most fierce, and I'm not very brave, he said to himself. Chapter 6. I will just have to use more of my skill, my wit, and my cleverness to catch him out. Anansi went to fetch a long bamboo pole and some rope. Then he walked along the road by Snake's home, laughing and talking to himself. Longer and stronger, or shorter and weaker? Which is it? Which is it? He said over and over again. Snake saw Anansi laughing and talking to himself. Hey, called Snake. What's the matter with you? I'm trying to work out whether you are longer and stronger than this bamboo pole or shorter and weaker, said Anansi. That's easy. I'm longer and stronger, said Snake. Just put the bamboo pole down on the ground and you will see. So Anansi put the bamboo pole down on the ground next to Snake. No, I think you are a bit shorter, said Anansi. Snake was angry. If I stretch out, you will be able to see how I am longer and stronger, said Snake. And Snake stretched out. The thing is, said Anansi, when you stretch out, your top half gets longer but your bottom half gets shorter. Then tie me to the bamboo pole so that I cannot move, said Snake. Good thinking, said Anansi, smiling to himself. So, Anansi tied Snake to the bamboo pole so that he could not move. Like I said before, I am longer and stronger than this bamboo pole, said Snake. Oh no, you're not, laughed Anansi. You're weaker and shorter and very, very foolish. Anansi dragged Snake all the way back to Niame. I have him, Anansi sang. I have Snake. So you do, said Niame. So you do. And I must keep my word, said Niame. From this day on, all stories shall belong to you, and you shall be known as Anansi, King of Stories. And now everyone will come and hear about me, said Anansi. And that is how Anansi got his stories. Finn McCool and the Giant's Causeway. Chapter 1. Long, long ago, there lived in Ireland a mighty giant by the name of Finn McCool. Finn was taller than an oak tree and stronger than a dozen oxen. He was brave and kind, but he was also very proud. I'm the greatest giant of them all, he would boast. There is no one who can beat me. Across the sea, in Scotland, there lived another giant. This one was called Angus. He was huge and strong, with an angry red face, and everyone feared him. One day, Angus was told of Finn's boasting. When he heard that Finn thought he was the greatest giant of all, Angus flew into a rage. I am the greatest giant, he roared. I will teach Finn a lesson he won't forget. Angus strode angrily to the shore. He looked across at Ireland. Cupping his hand to his mouth, he bellowed, Hey, Finn McCool, come and see what a real giant looks like, you great baby. The breeze carried his word to Finn, and when Finn heard them, his temper rose. Standing on the cliffs of County Antrim, he roared back, All I see is a giant fool. At this, Angus shook with anger. If I could only get across the sea to you, he shouted, I would teach you a lesson you'd never forget. That's easily done, Finn replied. He tore a great rock from the cliffs and hurled into the waves. The first stone of the giant pathway across the sea. Angus began to do the same, but as the giant drew closer to one another, Finn began to worry. He was getting tired, and Angus did look very big and very strong. So Finn hurried home to his wife, Una. She was not as big or as strong as he was, but she was very clever. He told her all about Angus and the pass across the sea. Una sighed. Finn, she said, you're being a big baby. I'm not being a baby, Finn said. Una put a baby bonnet on his head. You are now, she told him, and she gave him a nightgown and made their bathtub look like a giant cot. Lie down, she told Finn, and leave Angus to me. Soon there came a loud knock on the door. Una opened it. There stood Angus, his face redder and angrier than ever. I've come to see Finn, he growled. Una smiled. Come in, she said. He's out hunting, but he'll be back soon. Chapter 2. Are you a friend of Finn's? Una asked. No, snarled Angus. I've come to show him that I'm stronger than he is. Really? Said Una. A little fellow like you? Little? Said Angus crossly. I'm the biggest giant there is. Una smiled. I don't mean to be rude, she said, but you're hardly bigger than Finn's baby. And she nodded at the cot where Finn lay staring up with wide, nervous eyes. Goo, goo, said Finn. Angus looked at the cot. My, he said, what a big baby. Not really, Una said. Not when you think how big his daddy is. Now Angus began to worry. If Finn's baby was so big, Finn must be much bigger. Still, he said, Finn may be big, but he can't be as strong as I am. I'm glad to hear it, said Una. I have a job that needs doing. If you're stronger than Finn is, you'll find it easy. I'm sure I will, said Angus. I'm glad to hear it, Una said. I'd like you to turn the house around. Angus stared. Turn the house around? He said. Why, yes, said Una. Finn always turns the house around at this time of the day. I like the sun to shine in the door. Angus gulped. He went outside and took hold of the house. Then he heaved and heaved and heaved. And very slowly he turned the house around. In his cart, Finn felt the house move. He put his thumb in his mouth and sucked it, worrying. Angus must be stronger to do such a thing. At last, Angus finished turning the house. There, he said proudly. Well done, said Una. Finn can do it much faster than that, mind you. Angus's face fell. But that wasn't bad for such a little fellow, Una went on. You must be tired now. Come in, have a snack. Chapter 3. Angus went and sat down. Una gave him a cake. She had just made it, and it was still hot. Try this, she said. Finn likes nothing better than one of these cakes after he's been working hard. Thanks, said Angus, and he took a big bite. But Angus did not know that Una had baked a stone inside the cake. Ah! He yelled. What's wrong? Una asked. I broke my tooth on your cake, Angus howled. Really? Said Una. You must have very soft teeth. Finn loves these cakes, so does the baby, she added. She gave a cake to Finn, but she was careful to give him a cake without a stone inside. Finn ate it in 3 big bites. More, he said. Mommy, more. Angus stared. That baby must have very strong teeth, he said. Una smiled. Not really, she said. Not when you think how strong his daddy is. You can feel them if you like. So Angus put his hand in Finn's mouth to feel his teeth. And Finn bit as hard as he could. Angus yelled with pain. Just then, Una said, I think I hear Finn coming home. Angus's red face turned pale. If Finn's baby was so strong, Finn must be much stronger. Is that the time? He said. I'm sorry, but I have to go. Angus fight Daddy, said Finn. Not today, Angus said. Angus fight Baby, said Finn, and he jumped out of the cart. This was too much for Angus. He turned and ran. Help! He cried. There's a giant baby after me! He ran all the way back to Scotland, tearing up the path so that neither Finn nor the giant baby could follow. And Finn and his clever wife laughed and laughed, knowing that Angus would never again cross the sea to Ireland in search of the mighty Finn MacCool. If you ever go to County Antrim, you may see the few rocks that Angus left behind. They are still called the Giant's Causeway, and they are one of the wonders of the world.
Finn McCool and the Giant Causeway.